Now, Republicans have been doing very, very well in recent special elections. One high-profile race, of course, that just happened was the race of John Ossoff. Now, John Ossoff was a very milquetoast, very centrist candidate. He's like, when asked if he was a progressive or a liberal, he's like, I'm a pragmatist. I'm a pragmatist. That's the kind of guy we're dealing with, okay? But wait, Republicans also beat several progressives. You know, James Thompson in Kansas and Rob Quist in Montana, both Bernie Sanders-backed candidates. Now, the Rob Quist was very interesting because his opponent, billionaire Greg Gianforte, literally body slammed a reporter the day before the election. You would think that, I mean, well, you would think for one he'd be in jail, but obviously that's not how it works because he's a billionaire. And you would also think that people wouldn't vote for him. But I guess you were wrong. 42% of Trump supporters, according to a recent poll, thought body slamming a reporter was awesome. Oh, yeah, we told him. In fact, that made us more likely to vote for Greg Gianforte. So, now, when you look on the surface of those races, you do find a lot of differences, right? For example, Quist was, he was a folk singer, and he ran on progressive policies. He ran on single payer, right? Ossoff ran on not doing single payer and not raising taxes on the wealthy. Again, very, very centrist, very corporate Democrat. Now, in Kansas and Montana, Donald Trump won very, very big during the election. However, in Georgia, Clinton lost by only 1 point. Clinton actually outperformed John Ossoff, which is amazing. So, on those points alone, the races really don't look alike at all. But there is one important factor that I think played a role, among other factors, of course. I'm not saying this is a definitive factor, but one factor tended to play a role in all these other special election races. And that is Nancy Pelosi. You might be thinking, wait a minute, Nancy Pelosi? What does Nancy Pelosi have to do with anything? What does she have to do with Kansas? What does she have to do with Montana? What does she have to do with Georgia? I don't understand. Where are you going with this, Jeff? Well, for that, we go back to 2010. Now, in 2010, of course, the Republicans wanted to take back the House and the Senate from the Democrats. It seems like such a long, long time ago, the Democrats had control of pretty much anything other than the White House. Now, the Republicans did so by employing a very interesting strategy. Now, they decided that they should tie all the Democrats that are running in races to Nancy Pelosi. Huh. That's very interesting. Now, according to the Washington Times, the chairman of the RNC, that was Michael Steele, they said he tried to rile up the committee and got a standing ovation with calls to fire House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. He even had a red Fire Pelosi cap. So he had hats made. That's amazing. He also announced that the RNC would sponsor a Fire Pelosi bus tour that fall. So now, how did this work out? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, right? Fire Pelosi, you know, Nancy Pelosi, let's, you know, get rid of her, let's fire her, whatever. How did it work out? Well, it actually worked out really, really well. And it worked out so well that Republicans are still using Nancy Pelosi in attack ads against other Democrats. It's amazing. And why? It's because Nancy Pelosi is actually one of the most well-known, yet least liked politicians in the entire country. Now, people seem to despise her. Now, why? Well, I got an idea why. She's the face of Washington corruption. To show you how effective this strategy continues to be, I have to note that in all 4 special congressional elections that have taken place since Donald Trump's election, Republicans have used attack ads to portray Democratic candidates as allies of Nancy Pelosi. Those ads were incredibly successful, with all 4 Democrats losing their races. Now, again, I'm not going to point that as Nancy Pelosi as being the only factor. There's a lot of other stuff that played in, outside money, of course. In the case of Ossoff, painting him as an outsider candidate, right, who doesn't live in the district. Those were very effective campaign ads, as well as some of the other stuff, some of the other vicious ads that Republicans ran against John Ossoff, and the fact that on the liberal side, on the progressive side, he did nothing to excite the base. He said, "Oh, I'm not in favor of, you know, Medicare for all. I'm not in favor of single payer or anything like that. Or raising taxes on rich people. Why are you a Democrat? And then he ran on, well, I'm not Trump. Losing strategy. Terrible. So the Pelosi thing, I understand, is one factor, but it's one factor that seems to be hurting Democrats all across the board, all across all these different races. She's like a common factor that contributes to some of these losses, at least in some way. So basically, she's literally toxic to the party. Now, I'm not the only one that's saying this. There's actually a lot of people saying this. One of them is congressional candidate Joe Cunningham, who's a South Carolina Democratic candidate. Okay, he said the Democratic Party needs new leadership now. If elected, I will not vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. Time to move forward and win again. Now, you also have Congressman Philmon Vela telling Politico, quote, I think you have to be an idiot to think that we could win the House with Pelosi at the top. Nancy Pelosi is not the only reason that Ossoff lost, but she certainly is one of the reasons. Congressman Kathleen Rice added, there comes a time when every leader has to say, for the good of the order and for the betterment of the party, it's time for me to step aside, and I wish that would happen right now. Now, not only that, but you have Representative Tim Ryan saying of the Democrats, quote, the brand is just bad. I don't think people in the Beltway are realizing just how toxic the Democratic Party brand is in so many parts of the country. And he said that Nancy Pelosi has, quote, been getting pounded now for 10 years with negative ads from the Republicans. I don't think that it's fair, he said, but clearly these ads using her, linking her to our candidates, is still working. And when questioned about whether he thinks Pelosi is more toxic than President Trump, he said, quote, the honest answer is in some areas of the country, yes, she is. I think in certain areas, like in some of these special election districts, it doesn't benefit our candidates to be tied to her. So those are some strong words, man. Look, you might be wondering, okay, why is Nancy Pelosi so toxic across the country? Why is it that not just conservatives hate her? Because, of course, you expect Republicans to not like Nancy Pelosi. But why do a lot of Democrats and progressives, why don't they like Nancy Pelosi? She's supposed to represent the party, right? Well, it's because she's, for one, incredibly corrupt. Okay. Now, she happens to be very, very well connected with some wealthy donors to the Democratic Party. That's why she's in the power position that she's in. She is the money person. She reaches out to all the donors, and all these donors, of course, shower the Democratic Party, with lots and lots of campaign donations. So that's why she's in that position. You don't get a leadership position because you're good at leadership. Not in the Democratic Party or not in the Republican Party, for example. You get a position when you're a good fundraiser, when you raise all this money for candidates and for the party itself. Now, as far as some of the issues are concerned, she's not progressive on a lot of issues either. Now, she will not support, for example, a single-payer healthcare system, despite over 80% of Democrats and 60% of the country supporting it. She comes out and says, oh, the American people are just not ready for single-payer. They're just not ready. They're just not ready. Now, why do you suppose that is? Knowing the poll numbers as they are, how it's incredibly popular with the American people. Well, it's because she takes money from the insurance industry and big pharma, two of the industries that would actually be that would actually suffer under a Medicare for all system. No, the only reason that she can stay on as leader is because she can raise money, okay, for the party from super wealthy donors. She's the money person, and as such, she's the face of Washington corruption. Republicans and Democrats both hate that corrupt system. They both hate the fact that these large industries and the money has so much of an effect on our elected officials. Again, Democrats and Republicans alike. And now Republicans smartly have been using her and that corruption because, again, when you see her, you think, oh, corruption, of course. She is the corrupt liberal elite living on the coast. Well, I don't want to have anything to do with anyone who's even close to her. Again, a lot of people in the Midwest, this is how we feel. Okay. Now, I actually know how to fix that. And that means not just replacing her, but replacing her with a strong progressive who isn't corrupt. I know, it's a radical idea. Replace a corrupt politician with a non-corrupt politician. What are you going to do? Run ads against the non-corrupt politician? I guess you could. But in the case of, for example, there's a reason that they haven't done this against Bernie Sanders, right? You don't see a lot of Republican ads for these candidates linking these candidates to Bernie Sanders, right? Even though this candidate, for example, Rob Quist, who they ran attack ads, vicious attack ads against, they didn't tie him to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is incredibly popular. No, they tied him to Nancy Pelosi. And now, why didn't you tie it to Bernie Sanders? Because Bernie Sanders, as I said, he's the most popular politician in America, and he's actually not seen as the face of corruption, as much as the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment continue to try to paint him as. But they can't do it, because they can't find anything. So, yes, you replace a deeply unpopular speaker or deeply unpopular minority leader with somebody who's actually popular and runs on real progressive policies. And you can no longer run those ads. That might actually help some of the candidates. See, you know, the strange thing is that leadership happens to matter. When you have leaders that are incredibly corrupt running a party, well, that looks bad for the entire party. When you replace those leaders with people who are not corrupt, well, it turns out that people might actually look at your party and be like, so what are you doing on policy? Oh, so you're not getting paid by the pharmaceutical industry or the health insurance industry to stop things like single payer that are incredibly popular. Or you're not being funded by the fast food companies that are trying to make you vote against a living wage. Oh, well, it looks like I might actually support your party's candidates. Assuming, of course, that they're good on the issues. And that's what we're trying to do by replacing these corporate Democrats with actual progressives. The whole thing is that, look, it's time to replace Nancy Pelosi, okay? If not, she's going to continue to hold back potential progressive leaders of the party from taking over and actually transforming that party into something that's more progressive and something that could actually win, something that stands a chance of not only winning votes from Democrats, but crushing Republicans and actually enacting real change. We've got to get rid of Pelosi. It's way past her time. She's super, super rich, so there's no reason that she can't just go and retire or do something else or start a charity, do something, anything. Just get out of politics. You're toxic. It's time to go. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.